I am joined by Robert Griffin III, James White, Field Yates Meanekeims.
All right, so first play we're going to look at 2nd and 2, one of the Patriots' first offensive plays.
What's going on, everybody? Mike Kadlick, Taylor Kyles here for CLNS Media, back with another episode of the Patriots Daily Podcast, powered by Prize Picks, powered by Game Time, and today powered by a very special guest. Today we're joined by none other than the Check the Mic podcast, Steve Palazzolo, here to talk all things Patriots, all things free agency leading up into the draft. It is what they call silly season coming up in the NFL, so tons going on. So we are very pleased to welcome you, Steve, as a guest. Thank you so much for joining us. And how has your off-season, not really off-season, gone so far?
It's been great. I mean, I like the off-season as much as the regular season, team building season. Everybody's got hope. We're talking draft. We have free agency. What did your team do? What didn't they do? I love this as much as I love the season.
It's the best. It is the way you set up your team. You figure out what's going to happen, what's not going to happen. It's I would say all 32 fan bases have some sort of hope and some sort of pessimism going on right now. So that's kind of where we want to start here. Overall, I know you and Sam on the pod have done really a dive into pretty much every team thus far. But so far, what are your thoughts on what we've seen from the Patriots under the Mike Vrabel regime thus far?
So I think overall they've gotten better. I think that's the resounding answer from a lot of people in New England media and beyond. They added a lot of players. They got better. But the roster, as much as we've talked about the offense, the roster had issues on both sides of the ball. I think they were kind of fake good in 2023, where they overachieved defensively or above what the personnel should have. And I think we saw that last year where they regressed on the defensive side of the ball. So getting some impact players on the defensive side of the ball, adding a few pieces on offense, still a lot more work to do, of course, but they've definitely made strides in the right direction, adding a lot more depth on both sides of the ball.
And Steve, watching your breakdown of the Patriots and their free agency moves, I thought it was very refreshing that you acknowledge, there are moves that they didn't make, but you also have to look at, all right, just because they signed this player or didn't sign them doesn't necessarily indicate what their attempts were. So when it comes to teams and their free agency process, how do you kind of decide, all right, this is going to be my perspective? Because we know that these teams, try and shoot for the Ronnie Stanleys and the Chris Godwins, but the reality of free agency is it's very uncommon for quality players at ideal ages to actually be available.
Yeah, my podcast partner, Sam, and I keep making this point. I think teams are getting smarter. Overall, they're not letting some of these better players hit free agency or even get to the point where they're available for other teams as much as they did, say, 5-10 years ago. And it's not always going to show on record. Every team, there's always got to be a 3-win team and a 4-win team. But I think overall front offices are doing a better job of maintaining their core roster. So that means the next step is, okay, there are going to be some teams that are truly trying to rebuild, and they might get rid of a few good players. So I think even beyond free agency, it's that second wave, third wave of free agency. It's cut down days. You have to be shrewd in how you pick up and acquire players. You look at a team like the Commanders picking up giving up a 5th round pick for a Deebo Samuel. I think that's where, as a team, it makes sense to accumulate draft capital to have that cap space so that you can pounce when those good players do become available, when other teams are at different points in their life cycle. So a lot of the times in free agency, we look at the top 10, 20 free agents and we all assume, our team's going to go get all of those players. But like you said, most of them don't hit the market. They get franchised. It's not reality. So it ends up being that second and third wave of free agency that is crucial, because you could still pick up starters. And then beyond that, still making sure that you are in good position when good players are available via trade or cut or salary dump or whatever it might be, that you can pick up those players. So there's so many different ways of team building, and you have to make sure that you're in position to do all of them.
When even the Bengals are re-signing their star players, you're entering a different era.
I'm from New England. I'm from North Reading, Mass, originally here, but I'm Cincinnati native now. Joe Burrow's changing everything over here in Cincinnati. They've got a new indoor practice facility. They have a new locker room. They have 2 new shiny receivers that they've paid. So Joe Burrow has changed everything in Cincinnati.
He's really holding their feet to the fire. I liked the clip the Bengals tweeted out this morning of Duke Togan being like, I have my receivers, you guys go get your own, don't touch it. And it didn't seem like it was going to go that route. It felt like they were going to, they weren't going to make it happen, but they did. And again, that's why these, like you mentioned, those not even the second wave, third wave of free agency is so important because oftentimes they don't let the top guys, they don't hit the market. So Patriots, though, do end up with 10 outside free agents thus far, a couple re-signings as well, obviously highlighted by Milton Williams, and then the re-signings, Austin Hooper comes back on a one-year deal. But so far, Steve, what you've seen from New England thus far, what was the, I guess, your favorite or maybe most important signing they've made so far? And what's the one where you're kind of sitting there like, I don't know why they did that, or even if it was, felt like maybe an overpay or something along those lines?
Yeah, anyone who listens to our show knows about my love for Morgan Moses at right tackle. I mean, every year there's a dependable offensive lineman or two on the market. And when we go through, we try to do team building exercises for every team. And I'm saying, look, if you have a tackle need, this is the guy for you. And only one team can sign a Morgan Moses. And I thought the Jets made a good move to sign him last year. Obviously, it didn't translate to wins, but the guy generally stays healthy. A couple injuries the last couple of years. Stays healthy, solid run blocker, solid pass protector. And I use the word solid a lot in the team building discussions because getting a good, dependable, solid player is important in today's NFL, especially when you have an offensive line that essentially has four spots that you can at least upgrade for the Patriots. So I think getting Morgan Moses, solidifying the right tackle spot for a couple of years, more work to do on the other side, see what happens at center. But as a starting point, I love that. He's getting a little bit older, but not old enough that he's fallen off the table. So I like Morgan Moses quite a bit. And I like Carlton Davis quite a bit, especially when you pair him with Christian Gonzalez. I mean, that guy can play. I thought it was a steal by the Lions for a third-round pick. They only got a year out of him, so that's why that happens. That's why Tampa Bay gives him up for a 3 to kind of get that a year early before the comp pick. But I thought that was a good move by Detroit last year. Is playing a ton of man coverage, basically taking on a very difficult workload and handling it extremely well. Love that 1-2 punch with him and Christian Gonzalez right now at corner.
Also kind of love the Milton Williams signing just from this perspective because Morgan Moses helps out Mike Nwonu. Carlton Davis helps out Christian Gonzalez. And then you're hoping Milton Williams and Keon White, right? Another younger guy hasn't, really lived up to expectations quite like those guys, but hoping that Milton Williams can unlock him and take away some of the double teams that he was seeing late in the season.
Yeah, and obviously they paid a ton for Milton Williams. So if you go back and look at bang for the buck, it might not end up being the best actual deal. I can hear Boston media right now asking where are the 14. It should be 14 sacks per season for Milton Williams, but he adds way more than sack totals. He can have an 8 sack season and still create a ton of disruption. They can move him around the line a little bit, but he's going to be a headache for opposing guards. That does free up Keon White a little bit to move around as well and create his mismatches as we've seen him do in the past. The one signing I didn't love, but when you add it to the totality, it's Harold Landry. I know Landry's a pretty solid run defender, but being with my PFF history, I think there's a lot of value in PFF grades, pass rush win percentage. I think it's a great way of defining a player's actual disruption on the field. Harold Landry just has not been that guy. He's been the guy that is good at, cleaning plays up. He finishes extremely well, probably, plays contain well enough. But as far as being a one-on-one disruptor, even when he was picking up 12 or 13 sacks in a season for Tennessee, he wasn't really that guy. So I think he's the only signing where I look and I say, okay, that's a lot of money for a guy that I think needs a lot of other pieces around him, but it's not a bad player by any means. You're trying to reset the culture, get players that Vrabel's familiar with and everything. So there's a piece of that makes sense. But Landry, I think it's easier to stomach when you have Milton Williams, when you have Keon White, see what happens in the draft, and when you're building that entire defensive front with some depth.
I was going to ask that about Landry. I know when I listened to you and Sam the other day, it was kind of, you were both a little hesitant on it. It's, there's clearly the angle of he has the familiarity with Vrabel. He knows Terrell Williams. He worked with him along the defensive line in Tennessee. Is that something that I guess is just an overrated aspect? Is it because it's, you sign up for so much money and that's sort of the only real upside? Or I guess what's more so your take on why, maybe it wasn't the best signing for them?
I think familiarity is a little overrated. I think I think there's a few things that we overrate in the entire process of eval. I think part of it is familiarity. I mean, if you look at free agency, every guy that signed, it's like, oh, he played under this coach 3 years ago. He played under this coach. Everybody. And look, if I'm a GM tomorrow, I might hire some former coworkers because I know what I'm getting from them and I'm familiar with them. I know how they operate, right? So I get it. But it's probably overrated, to pay players just for the familiarity aspect. And Sometimes I think scheme fit is overrated. If you just get the good player, you can fit him into any scheme for the most part. I think that stuff's generally overrated. So that's my thing with Landry. Again, it's going to be easier when Milton Williams is in there, right? And he's creating disruption. And like I said, Landry's a good finisher. He has those high sack totals for a reason, but it's a reason why through the years of evaluating football, I try not to look at an 8-sack season and say, well, it must be good. I mean, if you rush the passer 400 times, the difference between 8 and 12 sacks is negligible. It's a little bit of luck. It's did the quarterback roll into you? There's all these pieces that are added to it. So for Landry in particular, he just has not been a one-on-one pass rush disruptor that I think New England still needs, right? If Abdul Carter's on the board at 4, there's a legitimate conversation there. And then if you have Abdul Carter and you have Milton Williams and you have Keon White, now you're building some depth. But I don't think Harold Landry's anything close to that type of player, and that's why it's a bit of an overpay.
Yeah, and when it comes to the Harold Landry relationship, I even said when he was signed, this is going to hit very different if they end up landing Milton Williams, because then it's, Jeffrey Simmons, that symbiotic relationship a little bit where Harold Landry's just like, hey, you get upfield, and when he tries to step up, I've got him. Makes it a little bit better. Hopefully Caleb Chason gives him a little bit of that blind side one-on-one winner. But I'm curious with these overpays, because that's what almost all these Patriot signings were. When you have a team that has more money than they can spend, next year we're expecting the cap to go up even higher. Another situation where hopefully they can spend it, but the Patriots should have a ton of money. Does it matter really when teams sign? Because teams even point out like free agency is overpaying. Does it really matter when you overpay a free agent, or does it really only matter if down the road that contract comes back to bite you in terms of like not being able to get other guys?
It's down the road, and it's also the flexibility going forward. Like I said, with Washington and New England's in this boat, right? You have the rookie contract quarterback. It can't be overstated how much of a bargain it is to have the rookie contract QB. So Washington has the same thing. They have that flexibility to flip a 5 for Deebo Samuel. There's a history of the NFL for 4th, 5th, 6th round draft picks being flipped for pretty good players, and the ability to be able to take on those contracts. So that's the only thing is if you have no interest in this player 2 years from now and you're eating dead money. And then the second one, if you lose some flexibility a year or two from now when there are players available and you might not have the flexibility to go get them. I don't think New England's there yet, but that's the only issue I think with overpaying players, because you're right. They had to spend something at some point, and this is just what the market is at this point.
I'm glad you mentioned overpaying, and I'm glad you mentioned taking on contracts. That might not look great because I want to get into that in just a second. But first, before we get back to it, a quick word from our friends over at Prize Picks. We will be right back. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. And all you got to do is pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. So run your game all season long on Prize Picks. They now offer Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. And the second half of the basketball season is officially here, and the race to the playoffs is heating up on Prize Picks. So don't miss your chance to cash in as the league's best fight for playoff positioning. You think LeBron James will get more than 24 points? You think Giannis will get more than 35? Cook up those hot takes with your friends and win real money this basketball season. Prize Picks app today. Download the app and use that code CLNS. You get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, that's Prize Picks. Thanks again to Prize Picks for sponsoring Patriots Daily. Head over there, use that code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. All right, let's get into the fun stuff here. And, Steve, I'm glad you mentioned the Boston sports media angle of this. I know you've done some things with Zoe and Bertrand over on 98.5, especially during Super Bowl week. So always look forward to your hits with them. But sort of an angle there is the Patriots' lack of offensive spending thus far, and kind of attacking going after DK Metcalf, spending a second-round pick for the opportunity to sign him to, a 5-year mega extension. Even Cooper Kupp goes for $15 million a year for 3 seasons. And then the Laramie Tunsil trade is there as well. So I guess on this show and over the last couple of weeks, I personally have been of the mindset that, at least for Kupp, it was only money. And if it doesn't work out, at least he didn't trade draft capital. As far as DK, he's younger. He's been more available than a guy like Cup. I would have done something similar to that as well. Me and Taylor have gone back and forth on that a few times. I just want to get your take on, should they have swung for the fence on one of these guys? Should they have maybe spent some capital for Tunsil and protect Drake May's left side? Should they have gone for Cooper Kupp? And even if he's not going to play 16, 17 games, you get the experience in the room. And then the DK Metcalf angle of it as well. Where are you on the Patriots still not essentially addressing their two biggest needs in left tackle and wide receiver so far?
So I think of those three, the DK Metcalf one makes the most sense to me, even giving up the second round pick and paying. He's the most sure thing out of those. Like, you know what you're going to get. He's in his prime. You don't have too many of those 15-yard per reception receivers around the NFL, those legitimate stretch the field type of options. Cooper Kupp, I thought, I've been pairing him with the Patriots forever. I thought he was a great option for them until it became 3 years, $45 million, until you see the price tag on it, because I thought it would be, I compared it to an Adam Thielen situation in Carolina, where, okay, this guy's lost a step, but he's savvy, knows how to get open, good routes. And Reggie Wayne ended his career with Andrew Luck. He spent a year basically as his possession receiver binky. And I thought that was a great, transition type of piece for Andrew Luck. So those are the receivers that I remember. And I'm like, okay, well, Cooper Kupp with Drake May, that makes sense. And it buys you some time while you're trying to build that wide receiver room. But at that price where Seattle's paying him to be a 2, next to Jackson Smith and Jigba, that's difficult, I think, to stomach. And then the Laramie Tunsil trade, I think, just showed the scarcity of the left tackle position. And Houston,
100%.
He ran his course in Houston. There was whatever locker room and stuff that they were trying to get away from. But you see multiple draft picks going back to Houston from Washington. Washington's in a place where they feel, they're in the Final Four, right or wrong. They're in the Final Four, and they feel like, all right, this is our chance to go for it. So they're going to get Deebo Samuel. They're going to get Laramie Tunsil. I don't think New England's in that place yet, even for a left tackle, this left tackle position, which is so difficult to fill because, again, teams don't let good starters hit the market. And the fact that Houston even did was, a kind of minor miracle for Washington, but they had to give up a lot. And I don't think the Patriots are in any kind of position to give up multiple draft picks for one player right now, especially when you have, essentially 3 to 4 spots to fill on the offensive line still, in the receiver room to fill. So to me, the DK one is the cleanest. If you could give up a 2 and pay the money to just get that spot knocked out, and then you still might have one more receiver. You feel pretty good about Demario Douglas maybe in the slot, have one other receiver opposite DK. And look, second round's probably where you're going to spend on a receiver anyway, given, that it's generally good value. That's where DK was found. That's the one I think that I would say is the one that you could have done and felt pretty good about it.
My only real hesitation with the DK trade, and again, this is why Mike and I went back and forth on it. I was just saying, in a room with Jalen Polk, Javon Baker, like a lot of young guys, and also like as beat reporters, it's one thing when you read the headlines about, young players saying things and making headlines. It's another when you're in the locker room and you're just like, man, you just wish there was an adult who could kind of be like, hey guys, this is how you be a pro, just so they have some understanding. So I'm like, hey, if you add DK in a room of young guys, I don't know how that's going to go. Because, the second he grabs someone's face mask and it's like, well, that's the highest paid guy on the offense, starts to look a little funky. But I wouldn't have minded if they added him. But that is in the past. We are moving towards the future. And there are still wide receiver options, right? Whether it's via trade, whether it's in the draft. Ted McMillan ran a 4.48. People talking he was going to run a 4.7. No. Sub 4.5. Maybe runs more of a, mid 4.5 in my opinion. But that is what it is.
I just read on another report from Ted's Pro Day. Got 40 guys clocked him in the range from 4.46 to 4.52. So it's somewhere in between there. So
so not bad. Okay, so with that knowledge now in your back pocket, who are the wide receiver options that are available that you think the Patriots could pursue to at least be, maybe not that bona fide ex-AJ Brown type, but at least a respectable presence that could maybe affect where defenses are trying to play you?
Are we talking Ted McMillan at 4 now? Is he in the discussion?
I've been saying we should at least consider it. I think not even like giving it 2 thoughts is kind of nuts when the Patriots have such a glaring need.
I like him. I like him a lot. I mean, my only note on McMillan was the speed. When I'm watching him, I'm like, big guy, still sinks his hips, in and out of routes, unbelievable hands. I think he's man coverage. He could be your back shoulder guy, win contested catches, good feel for the game overall. My question was dynamism, right? But you had the same question about a Drake London a couple of years ago, who I think ends up being a pretty good comp. He actually didn't run and was still the first wide receiver off the board in a loaded wide receiver class with Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave and Jameson Williams coming after him. So I still think McMillan is probably worth the top 10 pick. The only issue with New England, I'm usually a draft the best player type of person. The left tackle need is so glaring. And I think the decision, I know the question was about receivers. The decision for them, though, is going to come down to the scarcity aspect of it. You don't find left tackles in round 2 all that often. You don't find late developmental tackles, and you can't afford to do that. So that's going to be the challenge for the Patriots. So I really think it's going to be that second wave of receivers, and it's probably not as strong as last year's with, say, like Ladd McConkey was on the board and a few others. I know what happened there. But I like Jaden Higgins quite a bit for Iowa State. I think he's starting to get a little bit more of that late first round type of buzz. Big body that he also ran high 4.4s. Didn't feel like a high 4.4 guy, felt like more of a 4.5 guy, but that was a big box that he ticked because he wins in a similar way to McMillan. I think he could be a really good player. I got a little more work to do on a guy like Trey Harris from Ole Miss, but that offense is just obnoxious because he's running just a couple routes, one of those deals. But he's got some vertical speed that showed up in that offense quite a bit. I think Jack Besh from TCU was one of those guys that was originally going to be going, maybe as late as day 3, that sneaks into day 2 now, maybe in the second round. Had that great Senior Bowl, of course, was an awesome story with him winning MVP. I love his ball skills, and he just does a lot of things extremely well. But we're playing, I'll throw Jalen Royals in there too from Utah State, who I think really good route runner, as it reminds me of an Amari Cooper type. So we're playing the same game as last year, right? Which is get the highest value position in the first, second, and third round. Do you double up at the same position? Don't have PTSD just because of what happened with Jalen Polk and Javon Baker. I hear Patriots fans right now.
And N'Keal Harry and Tyquan Thornton.
Well, you can't do that. That's one of the worst things fan bases do. Well, Belichick never drafted a receiver. Well, this organization can't draft a receiver. Right. All right, so just quit, right? Just all you should ever do is find a 7th round quarterback conversion from Kent State. That's the only way you could find a receiver, right? Just find that next guy. So the past doesn't dictate the future. But even from last year with the same front office, don't have PTSD just because Javon Baker and Jalen Polk weren't good. You have to double up at this position again until you find somebody, because you're not just finding one, you really need 4. You need 4 pass catchers in today's NFL to keep defenses off balance. So you have to double up once again, and it's probably going to be in that 2nd to 4th round range where you have to take a couple shots there.
Any interest in a stopgap guy there, like a Brandon Cooks, Amari Cooper, Eli Moore's out there? You think there's any chance they go for a wave 2 wide receiver, or just kind of wait for late April at this point?
I have no problem with volume. I mean, the problem with a guy like Amari Cooper is I'm generally during this time of year, I get the big starry eyes on like the names, right? Amari Cooper, DeAndre Hopkins, and Stephon Diggs.
Yeah.
Right. And so in a year ago, I thought all those guys were good. I thought Stephon Diggs was a great move by the Texans. I thought DeAndre Hopkins was a great move by the Chiefs mid-season, picking him up. And I thought Amari Cooper was a great job by the Bills, picking him up mid-season. And the fact that Cooper went and had like 2 good games for Buffalo, Hopkins had 1 or 2 good games for the Chiefs when they needed him. And, Stephon Diggs got hurt, and, who knows what, you talk about the leadership and don't know if he's going to fit the bill there. So that's the challenge with the older receivers. We saw Randy Moss, go from great Randy Moss in 2009 and early 2010 to all of a sudden he just can't get open and he's bouncing around the Niners and the Titans. It hits quickly for receivers, and some of those guys that you're mentioning, it seems like it's hitting pretty quickly for them. So they would be just a stopgap, and I would have lower expectations for an older veteran like that.
And there are none of those kinds of options at offensive tackle. Like Cam Robinson, maybe, but it also sounds like the Patriots are not in on him for whatever reason. So kind of going back to the draft, I don't disagree that a left tackle should probably be where the Patriots go. But like other positions, there's no one where you're like, yes, like this is the definitive pick. You get this guy, you're good. Because Will Campbell, as talented as he is and as successful as he was at the SEC level, you're also talking about a guy who has wingspan and arm length. That would be a massive, massive outlier at the position. So then you think, all right, Armand Membu, yes, he was a right tackle. He played in the SEC. He had success. Doesn't give you the same question marks and might have more upside at the tackle position. So how do you feel at number 4? If the Patriots are going tackle, is there any chance that Armand Membu should be in that conversation? And also, if for some reason they do go Ted, Is there anybody you think who might be available in the second round? I'm like crossing my fingers for Ariante Ursary, but anybody who might be able to give them some quality left tackle play past the top 5 picks.
I mean, just to answer that question, Ursary is showing up in a lot of the mock draft simulators. Those aren't always the best gauge of the market or where a guy's going, but I thought Ursary would get a little bit more late first round type of hype, and I think it sounds like he might end up more as a second round pick. So yes, that could work. These are the same discussions. Again, in Cincinnati a couple years ago, we were debating Jamar Chase or Penei Sewell. And it was Jamar Chase, and then I was like, all right, we'll fill the tackle spot on the turn in the second round, and they didn't. They didn't do it well. I think it was Cordell was it Volson on that pick? It did not go well. Whereas the Chargers did it great last year, but they had a blue chip tackle option in Joe Alt, and then they came back with Ladd McConkey, tackle, then receiver. That's a great way to go. I'm still of the mind that Will Campbell deserves a shot to play left tackle. I still think so. He's got it's a weird body type. It's beyond just the arm length. It is just general wingspan length. It's just a slender left tackle body, but he's an extremely good athlete, and he's good at blocking overall. He's not great. He's good at blocking, which is important as a left tackle. But he's not great, right? There's some pretty good SEC rushers that gave him some issues, but I think overall he's fine. The other thing that Membu, I think, would be fine in that conversation as well. It doesn't matter that he played right tackle. We see right tackle and left tackle switch all the time. The one issue there is it's not that a guy can't play on the other side. There's more risk incurred, though, if you are moving a player, right? We saw this last year. Talise Fuanga and J.C. Latham, both college right tackles, go to left tackle in the NFL. I think they got off to a slow start because of the transition. So that is just something to keep an eye on. Nothing long-term there, though. The other thing to think about, my general strategy is you're not drafting for 1 year, right? You can't just sit here and say, how do we make this team better this year? If they can pick up second wave free agency guard, figure out the interior. Like if they could go into the draft and only left tackle is the need, you may be able to stomach not even getting the left tackle, hoping an Ursary falls, hoping a Josh Carnerly falls into the second round, and you just take the blue chip player. And that's still better for the organization. And so a lot of the conversation is, well, you got to do well by Drake May. You got to do this. You got to do that. And I get it. But the best thing for the organization is Abdul Carter falls. I still think Mason Graham's in the blue chip conversation. Tet McMillan might be in that blue chip conversation. The picking the best player is still best for the organization. And you don't want to just say, Will Campbell, even though he doesn't fit all of the prototypes, we're going to take him anyway. So I would lean toward take the best players if you can. But you have to do a little bit more in free agency to get to the draft without those glaring needs. So you don't feel forced to take the left tackle, whether it's Membu or Campbell, because I think both are the quote reach at 4 there, because there's probably a better option on the board at that point.
Travis Hunter Ursary, baby. That's the 1-2 punch right there.
We can only hope. All right, we'll get into it. We'll wrap up our episode here with Steve talking breakout candidates for 25, as well as a floor and ceiling for next season's Patriots. But first, a quick word from our friends at Game Time. We'll be right back. Patriots Daily is powered by Game Time, the best place to get tickets to your favorite events. And it's not just sporting events. There are also tickets to shows and concerts as well on the Game Time app. And they have our favorite feature, the Game Time Picks feature. That makes getting those tickets even easier, filtering out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And as you know, NBA playoffs are approaching, and the NCAA tournament is also here. The first round will take place in Providence, Rhode Island. So if you're local and want to get to those games, you could get into session 1 in Providence for Friday and Saturday right now for as little as $125. And you get to see 2 games at that price. It's High Point versus Purdue, and then McNeese versus Clemson. So get in on it right now. Head over there to Game Time. That is the all-in price as well, that $125. You got to toggle that on in the app. It's my favorite feature. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it?
Game time.
I'm glad Amit cut it like that again. It is Game Time. Game Time is back as the exclusive ticketing partner of the CLNS Media Network. And as I mentioned in the ad read, March Madness is headed to Providence this weekend. Rick Pitino, John Calipari, all of the fan favorites in in college basketball will be here. So if you want to head down there, use that code CLNS, you get $20 off your first purchase. All right, Steve, let's talk again, 30,000 foot big picture Patriots for 2025. You got any breakout candidates on your mind? Could a Keon White end up as double-digit sacks with the help of Milton Williams? Is Christian Gonzalez going to make his way to the $45 million range, like close to what Derek Stingley did today? What are you expecting? Who are some guys that could potentially break out for the Patriots next year?
Yeah, Keon White's the first guy that comes to mind. I mean, I think we saw his potential early in the year, rushing the passer, being able to move around. I think the more bodies you add that can get after the QB, the better it is for him, being able to tap into that versatility. I continue to wait for the Marcus Jones breakout, both on the defensive side of the ball and offensively. Why is he not an offensive weapon? We're looking for weapons over here. Marcus Jones is on your team.
Van Pelt didn't know. Did you hear about that storyline? Van Pelt did not know that he played offense last year?
No, I mean, whatever. Well, he was the most
found
dynamic
out in like week
playmaker.
7.
Yes, he was the most dynamic playmaker they had the couple times that they put him out there. I mean, look, he walked so Travis Hunter could run. That's all I know. Marcus Jones, I'm always waiting for him to break out. I love him as a player generally. But I think Keon White's the big name. I think Gonzalez, I mean, you have a chance with the 1-2 punch of Carlton Davis and Christian Gonzalez to really feel good about that secondary. And Gonzalez, a full season from him, I think definitely has a chance to make a name for himself. So I'm looking mostly surprisingly on the defensive side of the ball for those breakouts.
Think they can get any help from Polk or Baker? Are those lost causes? I know we talked about them a little bit, but I don't know. I don't want to say breakout, but is there some promise there from the young receivers?
Look, I mean, they were drafted that high for a reason. I think, Baker had some flashes in camp. Polk was weird because it just looked like a complete mental thing with him as well at some point, right? It's difficult to see a receiver in a slump, right? And you just like, hey, just run the route and catch the ball. But he was thinking, he was overthinking, one drop led to another, and then it's, contested catches. It was like everything went wrong. Then he makes a spectacular catch and he's out of bounds. I mean, everything went wrong for Jalen Polk. So it could be better, right? And you're hoping that between the two of those guys, don't forget, for years, receivers took 2 or 3 years to get used to the NFL until the NFL did a better job of breaking them in. So guys still develop at different time periods, different speeds. So between the two of them, could one break out and be a complementary piece? Yeah, they just have to get the more dependable pieces first. Then it'll be a lot easier with less pressure on Polk and Baker, as like a 3 or a 4 rather than, hey, go fix the passing offense right here as rookies.
Which is what they asked Polk to do pretty much last season. And it was unfortunate because the things he was bad at last year were all of his biggest strengths coming out of college, catching, the concentration, which is how, you really can say, all right, it probably was just a mental thing. And I know everyone usually brings up Devontae Adams as the comp where, if it's a guy who didn't do anything as a rookie, maybe he can turn into that. That's a bit lofty. But considering Polk was in historically bad situation, hopefully he's Kayshon Boutte, right? Doesn't do anything as a rookie, comes in with a different mindset, fresh perspective, comes in, blocks his tail off, earns more reps, and then becomes more of a receiving threat. So just fingers crossed, at least one of those guys, especially in a Josh McDaniels offense where he'll know how to get them the ball. But still a lot of ifs with the Patriots. For all the optimism we can talk about, there's still a lot of unknowns. So what do you feel is the best case and worst case scenario for this team floor ceiling prediction? What do you got?
So the best case is we've seen a lot of flashes from Drake May, a lot of positives. The best case is he's close to a Jaden Daniels level of ability. And I don't think that's crazy. I mean, a lot of people had them in similar buckets as prospects. And Drake May had literally the worst situation of any quarterback in the NFL last year. So it was Daniels wasn't that much better, but it was certainly better. And then he elevated it. So the best case is May is somewhat close to that level of player, is able to elevate what they have, whether it is a little bit better offensive line, a better receiving core, and he's able to elevate it. And this is a team pushing the playoffs, because if May's that good and the defense is improved, they're challenging for a playoff spot. I don't think they're challenging the Bills in the AFC East, but Miami seems to be heading, they're in a direction where they need to reset a little bit, get younger. The Jets look like they're rebuilding. So a best case scenario for the Patriots is Drake May is what he felt like at times last year, which is a special player, and he's able to elevate the team maybe a year early, you could say, because it's still a rebuild. It's still a multi-year rebuild, and he accelerates it a year early. They're winning 9 or 10 games, challenging for a playoff spot. And then the worst case scenario is the same issues as last year aren't fixed.
Mhm.
Maybe the defense is a little bit better, and it's another 4-win team because it's not. I mean, that's in the range of outcomes, right?
100%.
No, it is.
If they trot, they're not going to, but if they trot out Vidarian Lowe and Layden Robinson and Cole Strange and whoever else they're trotting out there, it's not great. So
It's realistic. I just don't want to go back.
of course. But that's the worst case scenario. And plus, look, for all the positives with May, he had some turnover issues, crucial turnovers at certain points. He was inconsistent. He was a rookie, right? He was inconsistent. So if he doesn't take that next step and grow, then they might struggle to win some games.
It's fair, and we question the what's next at receiver, what's next at offensive line. And again, we expect them to take swings here in the draft. I guess you can't put it out of the realm of possibility that we are sitting here again next year talking with you on a breakdown, talking about, oh no, they won only 4 games for a third season in a row. But we'll keep your ceiling, the Drake May looking like Jaden Daniels, potentially heading to the Final Four as a better outlook as we wrap this up. So Steve, thank you so much for taking the time here with us. We really appreciate it. Before we get you out here, let our fans, let our watchers, listeners know where they can find you and what you and Sam have next coming up on your podcast.
Yeah, our show's called Check the Mic. We just did a 3-hour mock draft today. We're kind of long-winded
you guys
here.
were at it
Nonstop, all sorts of issues. But yeah, Check the Mic anywhere, right here on YouTube, anywhere you listen to your podcast, wherever it might be. It's all under the 33rd Team banner. So just search Check the Mic.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. This was fun. And a reminder to everybody else who is listening right now, we do also have bonus content here on Patriots Press Pass. Taylor is at it. He just dropped a new breakdown on Robert Spillane, Patriots' newest linebacker. So if you are interested, we do have our new membership tiers here. Rookie starter, all pro, GOAT status. We tell you about it every single day here on Patriots Daily. But if you're curious and want to know more about what we got going on here, please check it out on our bonus content on the channel here. So again, Steve, thank you so much for joining us. Me and Taylor will be back later on in the week here on Patriots Daily. So make sure you rate, review, and subscribe here to Patriots Press Pass. Until next time, thank you guys for watching. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. And we will see you soon. Peace out, everyone.
Bye.